Hello, everyone. I see some people popping on. We've got about 5 on right now out of a group of close to 60, which is amazing. 13 now. Just going to wait till we get about 2/3 of the group in before we really delve into tonight. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm going to put a little bit in the chat box. Okay. We've got about 21 people on. Hello, everybody. Just bear with us as we wait for everyone to join. Okay. It's so exciting to watch people come on. It
It's like they're walking in the market doors.
is. It's like I'm the little head car that's waiting for people to line up behind me. All right. Give it another minute here. Welcome, everybody. Got about 22 people on. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Bounty and Soul's first online webinar. The topic this evening we have deemed to be called Planting Seeds of Change. And we're going to delve into a variety of topics, and we would love to hear from you if you have any questions just to the group, or if there's a panelist in particular you have a question for. We encourage you to put those questions into the Q&A box that you'll find on your screen. I'll do my best to get around to all the questions, but if you find your question not answered by the end of the webinar, feel free to email me afterwards and we can get that addressed. All right, I'm going to start with Allie. She's the founder of Bounty and Soul, and we're going to go around and do some brief introductions of just everyone who's here, all the panelists that took out time tonight away from their families to join us. We deeply appreciate their time. And Allie, you want to start us off?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Allie Kasparian. I'm the founder and executive director. And there's always these really amazing times of celebrating firsts. And this is one of them, celebrating the first webinar. So I'm really excited to be here and just grateful that you all have joined.
All right, great. How about you, Carla?
Hey everyone, I'm Carla. I'm the Director of Community Engagement, and I largely work with our volunteer family and community partners, really just trying to get everyone on board in some capacity, whether that be by giving your time, by giving your funds, or by lending your voice to this movement. So really excited to chat with you all.
Thanks, Carla. Lyric?
Hi everyone, I'm Lyric. I hold 2 different roles at Bounty and Soul. One of them, I work as the Farmers Alliance Program Strategist. So that's working to strengthen our Farmers Alliance program, working to source local foods for our markets and support local growers. And then I also work as an educator to create education for our Rooted in Health programs.
Thanks, Lyric. And Adam?
I'm Adam Kelly. I work for Bounty and Soul as their operations manager. I have an opportunity to ultimately see just about everything that happens at Bounty and Soul. I value my time with the team more than ever, and it's an honor to be on this webinar right now. As I look back into the screen, as I'm sure everyone can see, I feel like it's showing me how beautiful this time of year is and how lucky we are to be here together. So thank you so much for putting this together, and I'm happy to answer some questions and get down to the gritty.
Thanks, Adam. You couldn't have said it better. This is definitely my favorite time of year. I've been doing so much hiking. It's been wonderful. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce someone who couldn't be here tonight. She's a dear member of our Bounty and Soul family, Abby Young. She's the programs manager, and I'll let Allie expand a little bit more on her role at Bounty and Soul.
Yeah, we're really sorry Abby couldn't join us tonight. So much I want to say about Abby, but her role is particularly crucial in because of our education platform is vital to this organization. And so Abby oversees all the education program, the Rooted in Health program, which under the Rooted in Health program falls Green Aprons, which is a kids whole person education platform. Also our Latinx engagement program, as well as the Farmers Alliance program. So she kind of oversees all those programs, and she plays a crucial role in coordinating teachers. And we'll get a little bit, I'll talk a little bit later on about what the programming looked like before COVID hit. So, but I just wanted to speak to her, and she's an invaluable part of this team.
That's a perfect segue, Allie, into what I wanted to share with everyone next. Was before delving into all of the things that have happened this year, there's been a lot on everyone's plate. I wanted to give a glimpse into what's the history of Bounty and Soul? How did this come to be? And for each of you as panelists, how were you brought to Bounty and Soul, and how has your role, what did it look like before the pandemic hit? Al, you want to start us off since you founded?
Yeah, so Bounty and Soul started from my own personal experience with food insecurity. I had moved to Western North Carolina about 9 years ago after surviving a near-death violent assault. And I came here really to rebuild my life and start over. And after many years of looking for a job and, trying to pay my bills and feed myself, I was just, in this place of, I couldn't feed myself the food that I wanted to eat, which was fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy food. And at the same time, during this time, I was volunteering at a welcome table at St. James Episcopal Church in Black Mountain. And I was doing that to, get to know people. I came here without knowing anybody and really with no plan. So I really wanted to get to know people and meet people. So I, was going to this community meal, and I got to know the community. And in that time, I met people just like me that were like struggling, just trying to pay the bills and wanting to eat healthy food, but they couldn't afford it. It was cheaper to eat, from the dollar menu than to buy a salad at McDonald's. These are some of the, things we talk about. And so one day I went to the Manna Food Bank to get some food for the meal. And I wandered off into this huge, like, football field size room, and there was pallets and pallets of fruits and vegetables like peppers and tomatoes and strawberries, and some of it was rotting, had seen its life, and then another part of it was like beautiful food. And I'm watching it now, somebody taking a forklift and bringing it out the door by the pallet. And so I stopped the person. I said, oh my gosh, like, where is this food going? And mind you, it was like a kid in a candy store, like all this food that I, for so long, was like, I couldn't afford to buy. And I'm like watching it now go out the door. So this person said, oh, it's going to a pig farmer. And so I said, a pig farmer? I'm like, why is it going to a pig farmer? And she said, well, nobody wants to eat this food. So that was like my proverbial aha moment. And I left there that day, and with this idea and this vision of, everyone deserves to eat food. This is going to waste. And there's a whole community of people that want to eat food and have access to this food. So with the community by my side, I, started with a table with a tablecloth and baskets full of food and fresh cut flowers on the table. And we started with one table of produce. And I had my camping stove, and I started to cook and teach people about cooking and healthy eating. And so that quickly grew into 5 tables, and one location grew into 3 locations. Grew into 5 locations. 2014, we incorporated, and I feel like we haven't stopped. We haven't stopped since. And I think the most important part of this was it wasn't me. It was a community of people that believed in the right and to have and the right to deserve also this fresh, healthy food for ourselves. So that's kind of the start of it, and really it's just continued to be community led. And I just say, like, it's such and it's one of those organizations that really attracts the most amazing people, and of which are here tonight to talk to about what they do, how they came to Bounty and Soul, and you'll probably hear a common theme. And one of them is this idea that the space, it was created out of a place of love and compassion and equity and justice. And that common bond is something that exists every day of this organization. And it's something that everyone on this panel embodies. And I can't wait for them to share their story. So that's really how it started and how it's evolved. It is, again, a community-based organization, a grassroots organization that is mighty.
Yes, that it is. One thing that I keep hearing over and over since I even started working with Bounty and Soul is the power of community. And that is something that has really pulled through, especially this year. I mean, we've seen that time and time again over the years as I hear the stories from you, Allie, and other longtime team members. But I've just witnessed that myself in the past couple of months. I think the theme that maybe you're talking about applies to me. I didn't even get a chance to introduce myself. My name's Tia Oster, and I just recently started working with Bounty and Soul this past a couple months ago, actually, at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I had started off as a volunteer and, made those connections with this amazing community. And I fit right in just in terms of the things that I truly believe in. And I feel supported in that every single day working at Bounty and Soul. And I know that there's other panelists here who have started out here as volunteers as well. If that's you, I encourage you to maybe share your story now.
That seems like a really good time for me to jump in. So I came to Bounty and Soul about 5 years ago. I spent a handful of years working at a food bank, very much like the MANA of the Central Gulf Coast region, after doing a few years with AmeriCorps programs, which is where I really found my passion for helping people, specifically healthy food access. And I feel like that's really lent to the position that I now find myself in. So when my husband and I relocated to the area, I kind of started at MANA's website and was like, I don't know if I want to work for this type of organization anymore, but I feel so passionately about the work that's being carried out by these agency partners. And it was really important to me to find a smaller organization, to be more grassroots, and to be closer to my own personal values. And I looked, and there was a listing for produce markets, and I was like, what a thing. Like, yes, that's me 100%. And I reached out to Allie, who at the time had just gotten the truck. There was like a campaign going on their Facebook page to name our very first truck, Little Miss Green Jean. They were just getting ready to debut their very first mobile markets. And I just knew I had to be involved in some capacity. So I've probably volunteered in every single role that we have. I remember doing cooking demos in the early days and recipe development, going out to farms and in gardens and gleaning at tailgate markets. So I know this work inside and out. And so now in my current role, I'm leveraging that volunteer support from our community, recruiting and placing and mentoring volunteers, and just it's been quite a journey the past 5 years, and I'm just it's interesting now to just look back at the way that we've adapted during COVID, which I know we'll delve into a little bit more, but that's a little bit about me.
Carla was the first person that I interacted with from Bounty and Soul, and it was the most welcoming experience. So I'll just leave it at that, but I mean it with all my heart. So thank you, Carla. Lyric or Adam, and someone feel more called to share? Or?
Yeah, I could jump in. I also came to Bounty and Soul as a volunteer much more recently than Carla. Just this year, I came to my first Bounty and Soul market. It was the last market this previous December, and I'd never been, and I'd heard of Bounty and Soul for years and very active in the local food community, and I just never made it out to market. And it was a bit of a tight winter financially for us, and so we decided to go and check it out. And I walked in the door, and within 15 minutes I heard Abby, who we've mentioned, our program manager, speak, and I said, this is it. And I went home and I emailed Carla and I said, I'm going to volunteer every single week, but I had to wait 2 weeks because it was Christmas time. And so I sat there and I counted down the days on the calendar for the next market. And there I was, the very next market, and I jumped right in, and I was doing the cooking demos at our Tuesday markets for several months until the pandemic hit, and my positions really essentially rose out of that. And yeah, I agree. The welcoming, the sense of welcome that I felt through. I remember specifically emailing Carla about a liability waiver, and the way that I felt so cared for in being able to send this waiver electronically. It was so easeful and joyful, and there was so much dignity in every part of the process. And now being in a role where I'm coordinating volunteers, being able to carry that forward and to know how I felt, being a little bit curious, what's going on. I've seen these gleaning newsletters, but I'm not really sure. And being able to be that welcoming presence has brought so much fulfillment to me.
A word that you just said that really hit home with me was dignity. And I felt that very strongly too within my first interactions with Bounty and Soul, as someone on the other side too, as someone who's going through the market. And I think that's all something that we hold very strongly within how we carry out our work, and making sure people feel dignified and welcome to come and be a part of our family. Adam, you're the last one, not the least, but.
It was really amazing to listen to those stories. I think the most interesting side of that is that I've heard most of those before, but I think hearing them all together is an incredible picture. Something that I cannot go without saying is that when I do bring up my story, which I'll start, I think the common denominator that we all will hear is Carla was at the source in the beginning of every connection. I moved here from Hawaii. I came here from Hawaii. I had two little girls, and my wife was pregnant. We knew about Black Mountain as just a really wholesome and complete family town, and so we had an opportunity to move here, and this is where we ended up. I remember, the first few months when we got here, I did not know anybody. And to me at the time, it wasn't important. I had two children that I was having a time of my life with. And I recall going out one day to ArtSpace. ArtSpace is a local public charter school here in Swannanoa. that Bounty and Soul also has a lot of opportunity to work with in terms of volunteer support. They have a little thrift store, and I was there just wasting time, looking, I think, for books. And there was a woman that came by and was just talking about my kids and mentioned that there is something called Bounty and Soul that offers free kids cooking classes. And it was just like that I thought to myself, well, that's exactly why I'm here, is to be around other individuals in this community and have my kids be a part of the land as much as they were back in Hawaii. And in connection to what Bounty and Soul offers, being connected to the land does not stop at the farm. It continues on into the kitchen. And so having that opportunity to be invested in a program, even for a moment, not knowing anything of really what to expect. I remember walking in there, and the first person I met was Carla. And I remember telling Carla, I have no idea what's going on. And Carla pointed, directed, as she was taking care of everything at the moment. And we slipped in and had an amazing experience with other community members, other community children. And then I think the first thing I realized is that it was being led by the community, that there was no specific person to Bounty and Soul per se, but it was a family of Bounty and Soul. And it was instantly walking in the door and feeling that protection. I recall going home that day before I even got to my house, and I was thinking, if I could do anything for the rest of my life, and it might sound super dramatic, but I feel like I've done some powerful jobs in my life that have demanded a lot of physicality and time and almost soul draining. And so finding something not only that would fulfill my soul, but with Bounty and Soul as the title and what I experienced, it was such an important thing for me to be invested and to be a part of Bounty and Soul. I was able to connect with Carla, Adam Tonkin, who was the driver beforehand. I did not have the luxury of meeting the couple of drivers that had definitely laid the foundation for Bounty and Soul in terms of the food. But, connecting with Adam and Carla and realizing again how strong of a connection they had together and how strong Carla's connection was to Bounty and Soul, it was nothing but a testament to the organization and to what Allie had started. I think when we settle into a grassroots movement, I think the most incredible and organic part of that is that it always goes back to the roots. And the roots of Bounty and Soul are on this screen. I think not all of them, perhaps. I know there's many members that that are not able to be here anymore, but I consider myself lucky to have been a part of Carla, your life, to have met you and to feel that embrace into Bounty and Soul that I was offered. Definitely something similar that I feel like I heard a lot in this. My role at Bounty and Soul, definitely has lived in a food world. And I know a lot of what we all do is food centered. Something that's really important for me, I think, to just display. I know Allie, me and you have had this conversation a long time ago just about, when I was raised, my dad, it was really important that nobody was hungry. There was just, as a child growing up, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. My dad knew nobody was hungry. Interestingly enough, 11 years ago today, my dad passed away. And it's an incredible feeling to be on this webinar right now and to feel like we are all talking about what is important to us, what matters to us, what we've invested our lives in, and what we believe in. I was talking with someone just last night, and they were talking about a job they have, again, and calling it a soul-crushing job. And hearing that, as devastated as that made me feel that individual feels that way, it gave me the most incredible hope and gratitude for what I'm able to experience every day. And I just feel like that is a valuable thing to display, especially during this time.
Wow. Thank you, Adam. It was very heartfelt.
I want to add, I would love to add to what Adam didn't talk about was, so if you were to walk into a Bounty and Soul market, it was a place of art. And the way the food was displayed and, the different colors and the overflowing in the baskets and Adam is a master at creating this experience that that participants and community walk into, and that touches on the dignity part that Lyric talks about. From the very beginning, that it was so important that everybody is seen, heard, and valued, that people are treated with dignity and respect, that we all are part of this. No one is any different than anybody else. And that we share this space of beauty. And Adam just, it was art. It's art. That's the best I can describe it. But the food looks like, if you were to walk into a farmer's market, that is what you would see and experience. So I just wanted to add that in because he didn't talk about that. And it's part of the Bounty and Soul experience, that if anyone hasn't come to a market, that you experience, besides the warmth and the welcoming and all of that, it's the beauty and the sacredness of the food, which is, again, really, really important to our work. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think that ties a lot also into what Adam was speaking to, as well as the connection to the land and paying homage to the foundations of what has come before us, including the people, just even the people that formed this organization, to the people who tended this land years and years ago, and just really paying respect and the kind of energy that brings to something and the magnitude of the power that has behind it. I feel that with what's done with Bounty and Soul, just simply through the displays, and the beauty and the love literally shines through. I don't know if I love that you touched on that. And I wish that I had been able to be a part of the markets before, we shifted the model. I think what we have done is incredible in shifting the model. That kind of pivot that quickly, I find amazing. But I would love to hear a little bit more, if you guys want to continue to paint a picture of what was Bounty and Soul like prior to the pandemic, like kind of a feel, and then maybe what's carried over, what's still there, what things are we holding on to and making present in the things that we're doing now in the best ways that we can.
I'll definitely just chime in, just to ride off of Ali for a moment too, into what you were saying, Tia. Thank you so much, Ali. About the aesthetic behind the food and how it gets decorated. I mean, I think that was truly just another extension of the foundation that Bounty and Soul has really laid down, which is intention. Intentionality comes in every single step that Bounty and Soul moves in. I know very well, that people will take food if it's thrown on the table. But it's the intentionality behind the respect of that food, the respect of the farmers that grew that food, the respect of that food moving all over the world, and the respect of the individual getting it, and that they should be honored as well into that display and affection towards food that I believe we all share. And so I think, just to give a snapshot of our market is really hard to do without putting a slideshow on of what it looks like. But if we have a moment, I generally, when I recall people walking in those first, 2 doors right before they get in, and Carla and I are there, and they're about to hear from one of us, about what to expect when they walk in those doors. And ultimately the biggest shock for someone they walk in is the people, is realizing that there are people everywhere. These people are laughing and smiling and holding hands and holding each other's boxes and playing with kids, and all these amazing things are happening. And it's more like walking into a party to realize, am I at the right place? And it's to let people know when they get there, you are at the right place. We should all be here. We are all having a good party. And if anything, that's how I would ultimately be able to talk to people about it, is let them know that food is the vessel we use. Ultimately, and again, I would love to, kick this over to Abby in a moment to talk all about that incredible programming and education that she puts on. But the food is the vessel that I ultimately tell people brings individuals to the market. We believe in that food. We believe in every step of it. Like I said, from the garden to the farm, from the farm, to the truck, to the table, to the belly. It is an important thing, but behind that food is the programming and is the connection. That's where I tell people, in my opinion, that's where the magic happens. Not to say that it's not all magical, but there's amazing magical things happening, and then poof, something incredible happens. And a lot of that happens when you walk out of a class, or when you get up from a yoga session, or when the kids are walking around and talking about the things that they just prepared with all of their friends, and then they're able to serve it, and then they're able to reiterate the nutrition behind it. Those moments are, if I may, it's a snapshot, not even a full story of what goes on at the market, but it's a party. It's a produce party, and I even go so far as to tell you we dance at this place. Carla remembers when that karaoke machine came out, and it was full on dance party at the end of that market to celebrate, right? We're not just celebrating the fact that we hosted a market, we're celebrating that we came together, celebrating that we actually were able to rescue food. We were celebrating the fact that somebody that did not know about fiber is going home with a box load of celery and they can't wait to eat all that fiber. Those are the magical moments that, we would talk about afterwards, about how fueled we were, how fired up we would feel. And I believe it even in this moment. That's why I'm here right now, because of those moments, because I believe in this community. I believe in community. I mean to say that, where a lot of the words that I would say to individuals is, I personally believe you're as strong as your neighbor. I think that's definitely a quote that people might say, but I believe it. I tell people I've lived in the space before where I've had really bad neighbors, and I've needed to rely on those neighbors, and it was not something that I could do. And that is, to me, an example that Bounty and Soul offered to me and my family. I was able to connect with my community, learn from my community, and now I am loved by my community, and I am able to love the community. And it's an amazing experience that only Bounty and Soul has been able to provide.
You're talking about a party. You're talking about a party, and I'm like, I still feel like it's a party. We got the jukebox out there sometimes. Everyone's in dress-up costumes as veggies. We're all holding up pun signs. It's fun. It was from the very first time I went to the market. So I think that's awesome that we're keeping a lot of those things alive, on top of just, really staying dedicated to exploring the root causes of the work that we do and how to act authentically from a real place of intention. And that kind of leads me into a question that just popped up in the Q&A box is, what is Bounty and Soul food distribution like during the pandemic now? Which is a perfect segue from small snapshot of what the market used to be into how have we pivoted this year? Because there's been a lot of pivots, the market model being one of them. Carla, would you maybe like to share on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And one small thing I just wanted to touch on, I think it's important to note that before COVID, we had 5 markets every single week in some really intentional communities. And we are still doing work with those communities now, just in, kind of an abbreviated capacity. And we have really pivoted and embraced people who might not be able to get to the markets now. So we're still bringing door-to-door deliveries to Blue Ridge Apartments for seniors who lack transportation to get to our markets, or are in a high-risk category and have reservations about attending for good reason. So we've been connecting those dots. We continue to bring food to the new location of Children and Friends Enrichment Center. and sharing resources with them as they continue to grow and pivot their own model to embrace online programming for older school children. And we're now intentionally bringing culturally appropriate foods and resources to the Alan Campos community in Swannanoa, where many of those individuals, native Spanish speakers, would come to us on foot to our Owen Middle School market, which was most accessible to them. So we are now solely doing a box distribution model. I like to call it like a free CSA box. You know, most weeks, 60% of that produce is local from local farms and gardens that contribute to us each week with handwritten love notes, fresh flowers, all sorts of beautiful things sprinkled into these boxes with intention. And it's an experience. Like, you know, when we talk about this produce party, yeah, it's happening. Like, we are greeting people at the entrance of that BYLO and guiding them all through that parking lot, having a good time doing it. It's been unique to my specific role because when COVID hit, there was just a flood of community support and people wanting to figure out, like, how can I give to this cause? How can I give my time? I mean, the volunteer applications were just pouring in. And that was so exciting. And of course I was like, okay, how do I find a place for all of these individuals? And with the unique circumstances of, we need to practice social distance, we need to wear masks, we need to be outside as much as possible. I never envisioned myself giving our volunteers a temperature check when they arrive to check in and asking them safety questions, but here we are and we're doing it together. We found some really unique opportunities to engage people in a remote capacity with writing those love notes, or even just going to different Ingalls locations and collecting the boxes that we use for our distributions themselves. I mean, that's the stuff that keeps us going. I mean, we are constantly brainstorming ways to find you know, new avenues to engage our supporters and volunteers. And I think one piece I know others may speak to more is the virtual education piece that Abby is so much a part of. And we've been talking about getting these resources on our website for months, for years, to have our recipes accessible for people that can't make it to a market or come home with a spaghetti squash and aren't quite sure what to do with it. And so, you know, driving the online education, the cooking demonstrations, the unpacking your market box that Lyric does every week, these are such helpful tools, and they, you know, they speak to the fact that we're not merely a food distribution organization. We want to build that connection. We want to talk about, you know, the nutrition value in these items and how to prepare them and really just connect at the end of the day. So
on that note, Carla, I want to weave it right in. We had another question just pop up. Is there intention and guidance about what goes into each box? And you kind of touched on that, but maybe delving a little bit into the nourishment guides and everything that goes into creating those boxes.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like Lyric will definitely be able to expand on that. But, you know, at the very core of it, you know, this whole box prep situation starts a day ahead of the market. We had a crew at St. James until 6 o'clock this evening, helping to get the hearty items in the base of all of those boxes. They're, I'm sure, outlined around the whole perimeter of the room with, you know, root vegetables and winter squash and apples, which are very much in abundance right now. And so we try to make these boxes as uniform as possible. There's always kind of a level of variability when it comes to things like berries and grapes and you know, nutrient dense breads and other healthy staples. And then all this stuff gets to the market and we sprinkle in the local produce, which always has a recipe or a nutrition tip, and kind of just, that other spark. You mentioned the nourishment guide, which is almost like a menu of what you might find in your box. And so those are in English on one side and Spanish on the other. So always trying to make those resources as accessible as possible with, information about yoga and Zumba and other ways to kind of create this whole person way of living. Yeah.
Lyric, do you want to share a little bit about how you help people navigate what's in their box?
Yeah, absolutely. Carla touched on a lot of that, but that's a lot of what I spend my time doing is trying to transform the type and level of education that we were engaging in pre-COVID into a format that's inherently less interactive, because folks have touched on today, I think, Carla, how community driven the market is. It's led by the community. And so now not having that face-to-face interface with all the education pieces has been wildly challenging. So every market, every morning of each market, I create a market menu. And so that has all of the foods that at least 100 people are likely to go home with. So the foods that we have in the most abundant quantity, just to name those, to give a level of identification if someone's not familiar with the food in their box, that could help along with that. And then the second page of the market menu is identifying all of our local farm partners, all of, even if it's a homegrown pint of tomatoes, their name is on that menu because they chose to partner with Bounty and Soul and chose to have their food loved and cherished by the community at the markets. And so we've been working with, I saw another question come in about where the food comes from. So I'll weave this in a little bit, but I'm sure we'll dive into that with Adam as well. But we've been working with over 35 local growers this year to source local foods for our markets. And every single market, we've had such an abundance of local foods, either donated or purchased by Bounty and Soul. So that's part of the market menu as well. And then every market, I unpack a market box. So that's taking home a fully loaded up box that would be going out to market and pulling out every single item in there and identifying it, the name, the variety name, where it came from. If it is a local source, we call out the farm in that regard as well. And then I offer a recipe tip, nutrition information, and storage information for each of the foods that I pull out of the box. And so that's a way for folks, again, if they've never recognized that food before, to have it named and to have really easily accessible information, either before the market starts or while the market's going on, that video is published. And then every week, myself and also volunteers create cooking demo videos for specifically the foods that are going out at market that week, foods that most people will be going home with, and especially some of the more unusual things. This week, we have radish greens going out, so I know I'll be cooking up some radish top pesto. And so giving people an easily accessible recipe. The recipe's typed out. It's also played out entirely in the video. And then just to touch real quickly on the nourishment guides that Carla mentioned as well, just the level of intention that goes into those on Abby's part. It's the market menu is on there, and then recipes are on there for the foods. And then it's also just a whole person view of, let's see, we had tips like journal prompts for self-compassion was one that I added a few weeks ago, or ways to stay hydrated in the summer, ways to practice self-love in your day-to-day, ways to cut back on screen time, lots of different things that go beyond like what may be a traditional metric of health, and really sink into how people are interacting with themselves and their community and the food that they're receiving. So that's I think a good summary. I know I'm forgetting lots of things because there's so much that goes into each box. There's so much that goes into each box. Yeah.
You covered a lot of the holistic nature of the work and the nourishment guide. So, and I feel like you addressed the question from Bree, and there was a side note from her as well. And Bree, I will be putting up a link to our website in the chat box towards the end of the webinar. and that you can just click on to go for more information about us, how to get involved, how to support us. If anyone wanted to expand on that now, feel free. I will be posting that link in the chat box though for easy access for everyone at the end of the webinar. If not, we can move on to, we had another question from another viewer, Michael, and this is going to probably delve into some deeper things, and we might not be able to address your question in fullness, but we will try our best. The question is Bounty and Soul doing any public policy advocacy? Is Bounty and Soul pushing for structural changes through laws? If so, how can volunteers help or contribute time and skills? So I will go ahead and just set the stage and know that a large amount of our focus is on what we're currently doing, and it's requiring a lot of energy right now, but the advocacy is backbone to the things that we explore when it comes to root causes. If someone else wants to build on that.
Yep.
I think
Go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, I think it's a great question. It's definitely an opening up a big door. But you know, like you just mentioned, Tia, you know, Bounty and Soul, it exists in the lane that we that we understand, if that makes sense. You know, we are confident in the nutrition realm. You know, we're confident in the education. We're confident in the food rescuing and the food display and the food offering. I think what's amazing about that question and something that I connected so well with Bounty and Soul is our impact and connection to the community gardens in the area. You know, I know Lyric had a moment to speak about some of the farm partners and gardens. You know, we have an abundance of local food that comes through our market, and it's not all from farms in the area that sell their product, as well as just community gardens. Dr. John Wilson Community Garden in Black Mountain is one of our largest supporters of food coming from directly the community that we exist in. What you just mentioned, Tia, was Root Cause. I am overwhelmingly proud to talk about Root Cause Farm that exists out in Fairview, another community garden that has provided Bounty and Soul with an incredible amount of food throughout the years that Bounty and Soul's had that relationship. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I don't think that falls under public advocacy too much, but I do acknowledge and believe that that is a huge impact in regards to the efforts that Bounty and Soul has in the community. Something like Carla, right, and the volunteers that come in to Carla, she's able to gear an incredible amount of individuals to these community gardens that are building and finding an opportunity to be resilient in their own way. I mean, in the smallest ways that I believe have a large impact are the children. You know, prior to the pandemic, we have many relationships with something like Black Mountain Home for Children or Art Space, which is a local afternoon art program here, or you know, these other schools in the area where Carla will reach out with these individuals and she's able to gear these youth and these children to a community garden where they're able to be a part of harvesting, digging, creating compost. Ultimately, I think in Bounty and Soul's world, that is our opportunity to create a public advocate that will be able to grow up in this world and hopefully be a part of the change. What are we doing? Seeds of change, planting seeds of change. Yeah, I think that's, you know, and I think that's ultimately what Bounty and Soul is doing, right? Is fostering the change that is existing around us already. You know, kids are growing up in a really interesting world with screen time. And so finding that opportunity, like Lyric just mentioned, to counter that through a health, you know, a health lens, and then being able to implement that into an action step, which is actually harvesting food that is coming out to the community, to the community. I believe that's a big part of instilling the change that we hope to see soon enough.
Yeah, and you said that very eloquently, Adam. And I really feel like there is an important role of public advocacy and public policy, but there's also that really important role of self-advocacy. And I think that is something that we inherently live every day. And in our mission and our vision is that the power lays within the people. It's why I like produce to the people, and you know, it is why, you know, the education is what it is. This you know, whole person health, and you know, we look deeply at root cause issues of chronic disease and food insecurity, and you know, what lies behind that, and really, you know, when people are brought together in a space and they are seen, heard, and valued, and given tools and resources that are needed and desired for change. That's really where the true power comes from, which lays, you know, again, you know, even if you're lobbying for a policy change in Washington, what's behind that? What is the data behind that? Like, what is the story behind that? And really, the work that we do, boots on the ground, is that work, and it's the transformation of lives, and you know, and we do it in a way that we do call out, you know, we stand for what we stand for, and we give voice to the voiceless, and you know, that's all part of advocacy work. And I think the other piece of that is that this is everyone involved in that, not just one person speaking up and, you know, fighting for policy, but it is a community that is behind, you know, that self-advocacy. So, and it's all, you know, again, that's part of the work that we're entrenched with every day. And from that is really where you experience systems change. It comes from, you know, many that are desiring the same outcome, and are willing to do what is necessary. So, and that's what we find in Bounty and Soul is, you know, whether it's the food system, the health system, it really all comes together. But when you strip that away, it's the people, it's the individuals. So
absolutely. Ali, I just wanted to say, you know, some of the points you were making when you brought up just even that word connection that got spoken about so much in the beginning of the webinar, you know, just to connect to Michael Murphy and talk about like that, again, that is an amazing question. I love it so much. It makes me think a lot about some of the things that are happening around us. But on there, I think the first part of it, you know, potentially that much of what Bounty and Soul would be doing might be less urgent, you know, or unnecessary. You know, I think what's interesting about that is, you know, something I think we all tried to display in the beginning, and I know we believe to the core, you know, well after, you know, this is over with, is that behind every single step that happens at Bounty and Soul, the community connection is everything that happens. That is the core of what occurs at a drive-through market or at a Bounty and Soul market. And I think with individuals, you know, that have the ability to, I don't know, per se, grow food in their front yard or have chickens within city limits and be more self-reliant in their own right to do that, I think is an amazing thing. But I do not necessarily believe that strengthens and builds a strong community. And so behind Bounty and Soul, I think it's just important to, you know, really showcase the fact that behind everything that happens, I mean, I know Abby, again, if she was here, she hears so much of the conversations that I'm having or Carla's having at the markets. And then I'll end it really acknowledging that the ultimate like mission here is to build a strong and resilient and connected community. And I love it so much. That's when Abby looks at me and just, you know, loves it. And we're just connected right there, knowing that we're here doing what we're doing together because we believe in one another.
Thank you, guys. I feel like that really answered the question to the best of our abilities right now. And I'm really hoping that we can have more webinars in the future where we can really delve into some of these topics that would take an hour to really unpack and just to hear voices all around the table. So maybe that in the future, and also have Abby on there as well. I want to get this other question in before we start to kind of end the webinar. What ways do you get feedback from participants in the regular market and during the COVID adapted model? This is a great question. I love this question because that's something that I find really valuable about what Bounty and Soul does, is that we directly communicate with the communities that we're actively serving. So who wants to kind of delve on that?
Abby, if she was here.
Abby,
Yeah.
Abby would do it. I'll speak to pre-COVID, and Lyric, you can speak to during COVID. So part of what I'll speak really quickly about that was touched on, but pre-COVID, these classes that we would conduct, they were coordinated with integrative doctors and nutritionists and health coaches and herbalists. The education that was brought was profound into these classrooms. And part of the teaching was interactive. So it was never a teacher getting up in front of a class and teaching a topic. It was always, engaging with participants and class members about, what is, how are you feeling about that? Or can you share something? So very interactive. And every month we had a series. So the first month was emotional, mental well-being. The second week of the month was on culinary medicine, which was cooking. The third week was on something about physical activity. And the fourth week, what was called Reflect and Connect. And it was a class that would gather the participants in class attendees to share stories and talk and get feedback and, really engage on a very intentional way about, what do you want to share? What do you want to see? What do you want to experience? How do you, what curriculum do you want to have taught? How can you contribute? So there's always that engagement, even at cooking demos or at the market, there's always that engagement. It's very, very natural for volunteers or staff to be engaging intentionally with participants on how's your experience? What could be different? What kind of food would you like to see? So that has always existed within the organization. And I'll let Lyric talk a little bit about what it's like now in a drive-through model.
Yeah, well, I think we've been able to maintain actually a really high level of that interactive capacity in the survey sense, because we do have so many volunteers at our markets, as well as interns and occasionally myself, who can, the role at the market is to be engaging with every single car that drives through and to be asking questions. And we'll theme them, theme each survey, what online education are you excited about? What gaps do you find in your educational experience with Bounty and Soul that we could fill? Do you have any barriers to access the online education? Do you have internet at your home? What would be a more accessible means of accessing this information? And then we'll have surveys, what local foods are you most excited about? And framing everything with that joyful and excitement piece. And having someone who's delivering the survey being really informed about what Bounty and Soul currently does in that regard and what we're capable of has really just led to a lot of one-on-one conversations that can happen in a safe way. The volunteer, the surveyor has a mask on and they're standing away from the car. There's gloves. The person in the car doesn't need to grab any pen or write anything. And so it feels like a really safe format. And then we've been able to take these quotes and these stories and these requests and really amalgamate that into what we are offering in an online and print format. And another way that we've been welcoming in feedback and input is just by putting our emails on just about everything we do. All of my market menu posts, on Facebook, it says, here's all the information about the market menu. If you have questions, email me. It's actually on the market menu image itself is Abby's email and my email. I spend a lot of time going through our Instagram messages because people will send messages on that format now instead of asking them at the market. And so just making ourselves more accessible in a digital space has helped a lot. I get lots of emails about, I got these mushrooms at the market. Can you help me understand how to cook them? And so that's been a really helpful way as well. And we've been able to really continue steering all of what we're providing based on community input.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have to close out on that question. I do see that there's one more in the Q&A box. And like Lyric was just saying, we're all very accessible. So I will take that question, Diane, and we'll get back to you in email form, most likely tomorrow. I truly, deeply appreciate everyone for tuning in. This was such a success. We had no idea what to expect going into this, and the time that everyone, including the viewers and all the panelists you see here, the time they took out of their night to make this happen is why we are the Bounty and Soul family. So I'll leave a little bit of tidbit in the chat box if you're interested in going to our website and finding out more. And we hope to do another one of these in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Mm.